name is Thais Gibson.
Thais Gibson.
Thais Gibson.
Thais Gibson.
Thais Gibson.
Thais Gibson.
I hope I pronounce her name properly. Thais Gibson.
I am so excited for you to be here with me today. Thank you for joining us. So excited to have you here today, Kevin. Thank you so much for being here. I just think the world of you, and I'm really excited to dive into the conversation about drive today.
Well, likewise, since our first talk, I don't even know when, and it seems like we've stayed in connection and our worlds are overlapping. And I am excited about that because I'm excited about what you do. My gosh, I've introduced it to my family, my audience. I mean, it's powerful. Again, it was one of those things. I can't believe that I didn't go down this path before of attachment styles. So I'm honored. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm honored as well. So thank you so much. So tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, your background, and really how you got into this field to begin with.
Gosh, the personal development, self-improvement field, I was brought up. It's like being born into a house of doctors and you become a doctor. Man, I was born into it. My dad came from, his parents were born Amish, and yeah. And here he is as a little kid, he gets a hold of, he sees some other people in this small town that live a different life than this conservative. Now he wasn't, he stayed very conservative and Mennonite, but they ultimately, had a car, and at some point they got electricity, and, they didn't stay full on Amish, but very close to that. And he saw people with a different life. And then he gets a hold of this little 45 LP of The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale.
Oh, wow.
And, it's such a funny story because when other kids are, hiding, girly magazines and whatever, he's got this personal development message that's kind of looked down upon from the religion aspect too. And so long story short, he goes and pursues, he leaves the farm, and it's a big story to not take over the farm, and leaves and goes to school and studies psychology and gets his degrees in there, and ultimately ends up going towards his doctorate and whatever. And so self-improvement, man, that was his life. So I was the first kid. And I was like the guinea pig. Let's see if it works on this kid, and I grew up in it, and I grew up going to seminars and seeing Zig Ziglar and Brian Tracy and all the big names, and going to Carnegie courses and sitting on the wall while he went through them. And I saw that, and man, personal growth has always been what I'm most interested in. Even as I did as an athlete, as a pro athlete, I did that, but now going into the, not in sports, but kind of the internal world, it's what I'm innately curious about. And to make it my vocation is the greatest gift ever. So that's what got me into the field.
That's so cool. I can't believe your dad found The Strangest Secret. I've listened to that, Earl Nightingale, right?
Yeah.
I can't believe he found that at such a young age. That's so crazy. And it's so interesting to hear your story of growing up in a family of people interested in personal development. Like, since when does that happen? What a blessing to sort of be around that from such a young age. Now, your early story is that you were a professional cycler, if I'm correct, for quite some time. And do you feel like being in the space of personal development and mindset and really learning to work with that really improved your ability to accomplish things as a professional athlete?
Yes, it's not all a perfect story. I mean, it's some of what I learned, going through your material of my propensities, and being I kind of adapt. We all get exposed to things, and we can embrace unhealthy aspects of it. So, personal development, self-improvement, it's great. And you can go down some wrong pathways. And I kind of took the no limits, no excuses. And that worked great as a cyclist. It's great when you're out there on a 150-mile race and you're going for the line, and it doesn't matter how bad you feel, you stick it out. That's great. I took that into life, and that wasn't always so great to take that into relationships. Let's just endure this stuff, and just that didn't, that. But yeah, it's interesting. Yes, it served me there. And yet it's a great story also of how we can pursue, call it our purpose or calling, whatever you want to do, how we can pursue that in different ways. Because what I found myself doing was using my platform as a pro cyclist to influence people. And we built up a large organization and a club and back then it was a newsletter list. And I was getting to speak these personal development things and aspects of my faith as at the time as well. And I realized, gosh, it affords you credibility and influence. And I was able to use that there, and then when I left cycling and, went to the next place, I ended up doing the same thing. And today I'm doing the same thing. So I've done it in different platforms, but that thread is run through, which I like seeing that. I like people to see that you can have transferable skills that don't fit just in one role. So yeah, it did help me, my gosh, in cycling, and cycling gave me the opportunity to have my first real experience with building an audience and having exposure and using your ability to influence others in that platform.
That's so powerful. And it's
Yeah.
cool to see the thread throughout everything. Now, you have
Yeah.
an amazing book called What Drives You, and you dive really deeply into drive as a whole. So I'd love to hear first and foremost just a little bit about your definition of drive and how that really applies to so many different areas of our life.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of different ways we look at drive, and initially, it's what motivates us. It's the reason that we do anything. But what I found in this arena is, and it really burdened me. You talk about going after passions. I tend to I have lots of things that I'm passionate about, but the things that I work at are usually the things that it kind of burdens me, is how I look at it. And it was actually Lynn Twist, the renowned humanitarian, and she was on the show and she said, the things that break your heart. Oh, I love that. And I looked and saw that people tended to view drive as something they had or not, like winning the lottery, or not, or genetically. You got red hair, I didn't. You got blue eyes, I didn't. Bummer for me. And that was how they looked at drive. Oh, these celebrities or athletes or whatever. And I realized that I always um got credit for being disciplined and driven. I'll never forget the time a guy was saying, and I wish I could remember the format, Thais, where it was or how it happened, but I was somewhere at some point, and some guy is going on applauding me for my discipline, drive. And he's thinking about, health and wellness and athletics and whatnot, because that's so tangible. And yet I knew a little bit about his background. The guy it wasn't some fancy job, but he had done good work, made money, saved money, invested money. And he's like already a multimillionaire. And I said, man, I don't have that kind of drive. You've got drive and discipline. You just put it over here and you don't get credit for it. We all do. That in combination with the person, and everybody probably knows somebody, if they're not that person, where they went along, they're kind of bumbling along like the superhero story, and then something happens. It's often a negative thing. You got fired, you got laid off, you had a heart attack, you're really overweight, had a heart attack, whatever, something happened. And the next day things change and you go from zero to hero. I mean, it happens all the time. And I think you don't have to go and figure out what drive is, or figure out, listen to self-help podcasts like mine, for 10 years, or read all the books. And you can be driven in a minute. It's all in us. That's what got me, Thais. That was the point. It's all in us. We've got the ingredients for it. We're just looking for that trigger. And we use the drive and, kind of the auto analogy of going, you've got drive, but you may just be sitting there in idle. You're in park. You may be stuck in park with fear. I mean, that you've got fear stuff. You've got drive, just looking for something to get you into first gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear, and get rolling. And that's what I wanted. I mean, I want that for my kids, to know what it is they want and why, and be driven by that and devote themselves to it. Not that it's all passion. It may be the thing like Mother Teresa that breaks their heart. That's okay, man. Whatever is driving them to know it, to be in agreement, alignment, we say, and to devote their lives to it. I love, those are the people like you who I want to hang out with.
I love that. That's such a powerful way of looking at it. So I heard two really interesting things. I heard one of the first things being, we all have drive. Sometimes it's just in different forms than how we're looking at it. Maybe it's not in our workplace, but maybe it's with our finances, or maybe it's less in our workplace, but maybe it's as a parent, or maybe it's as a friend and in our social community. So I'm curious about that part versus the things that break our heart. So the things that, we go through hardship, and there's this old phrase that this reminds me of, and it's like, make your mess your message. For people who are coming to you and saying, I have no idea where to start, Kevin, I have no idea what drives me. How do you help them really discover either where their drive is or what that mess might be that they could turn into a message?
Yeah, I always want this answer to be something really scientific, like this formula, right? Yeah, and I look at you and you've got this quiz that you can take and come and it spits out and shows you, and it's brilliant. I keep thinking, can I do one of those with Drive? I don't know, maybe we could. I haven't done one yet, and so it feels simplistic, or it feels gosh, I just had James Ree on the show. He's got his new book out, Red Helicopter, and he started talking about, we're in this digital life. He says, I'm more of an analog guy. And I thought, well, I think, yes, I am too. I don't know if it makes me old. I'm not a digital native. I'm an analog dude. And so it's really just going through. I mean, the impetus of the book came from something I wrote to my kids, my adult kids at the
Huh.
time, probably 4 years ago now. And I wrote, I think it was Father's Day. And I said, you know what I want for Father's Day? I want you guys to think about what you want. Go through that. At the time, it was the Ziegler Wheel of Life, which anybody can go look up. A lot of people have their versions of it. It's looking at the key areas of life: finances and health and wellness and work and relationships, and to look at those and ask yourself what you want, but then go deeper, because a lot of people can come up with something that they want, but do they know why? Why do they want it? Why do they want it? And that first answer, what I find is that first answer is never it. You got to go into that. Really why? Really. And I thought about my next books, like the 5 levels of why. It's always down there to figure out. And when you do that, you find, oh, that's why I want this job, or that's why I'm going after this career. Or that's why I think this way about money, or why my relationships. That's why. And you find out, and it's either, if it's something good and you go, gosh, that's great. It'll confirm that. And I find people really convicted, like, heck yeah. And that's usually where they're already having success. But it's over on the areas where they're not, where they often realize, well, first, a lot of them will realize, I don't really know what's driving me. I don't know. And well, there's red flag number one, or green flag. Look at it positively. Green flag. Now you know where to go. Or they'll realize, oh, what's driving me is, this expectation that was put on me back here, or an expectation that I adopted. It's a should. You should do this. And they realize, well, son of a gun, I don't even want that. I don't want that. And it's freeing, and they're brilliant. That's great. Let's figure out what you really do want. So to me, it feels simplistic in that sense, but it's really hard. I mean, to look at it, I just got an email or a text, Thais, about 15 minutes before we started here, from my son, one of my sons. I've got a few. And he said he had listened to The Strangest Secret since my dad passed away recently. And he
Oh,
talked about that again. We've kind of all been diving back into that. And he said, I'm not clear, Dad. Vocationally. He says, I'm not clear. He's clear with relationships. He's clear with his health and wellness. He's clear. But he said, I got to admit that I'm not really clear. I said, well, that's great, man. You know where to dig in, but it's hard. I want people to hear that, because it sounds simple, but man, sometimes to find that, you're like deer in the headlights, and that feels overwhelming.
and I think just the topic of conversation is so important, because you think of all of our programming that we get growing up and going through life. And, I feel like we don't want to be, as human beings, just genetics plus environment, right? Just whatever a predisposition is and however we got conditioned, we're just living on autopilot through that, because we're not really choosing our own destiny within that.
Yeah.
And so that introspective part of being able to go within and just start looking, I think, to your point, even if people don't know, there's a lot of things we don't know overnight, right? There's so many things that take a while to investigate and research, and I think that's perfectly fine. And so to start there with that introspection as a whole is such a powerful thing to be doing. Now, you mentioned something really interesting as well. You said we have these sort of positive things that can drive us, right? These something that broke my heart and now I want to change, and maybe I develop more empathy from that, or whatever it might be. But do you think there can also be these negative things? You sort of said we have these limiting beliefs, like this old belief I adopted from quite some time ago. How do you see that show up for people? And what do you recommend they do if they find that? Maybe somebody's carrying a belief, I'm not good enough, from being 9 years old and having a
Yeah.
tough set of parents, and maybe that's driving them to work all the time and then not be as present in the home. So how do we take those negative drivers and turn them into something more balanced, or beneficial?
Yeah, it's such an interesting question, Thais, because I look at, and again, my life is so uh, shaded in a good way by my kids, because I have 9 children. So I've got a lot of kids. I've got and I've got my oldest, I think, is 28, um, down to 11. And so to see them has been sobering. and to even look at myself and go, man, I can't not brainwash them. I mean, I can only expose them to so much. I want to say, hey, here are my values, but I want you guys to figure out your values, but they're only exposed to mine. And, I mean, I've done a lot of work to expose them. And I feel like, okay, I've opened the pie from this little narrow one to a little wider, and there's a whole world of exposure and experience. And I am concerned with all of us that we so often in our upbringing, as you know, it's so massively influential in programming that we tend to either accept it and accept a lot of it that we haven't questioned, or we just rebel against it. And I think neither one is. You talked about, your destiny. Neither one is stepping back and giving yourself permission to go, wait a minute. Okay, granted, I only know this stuff. What do I actually want? What do I believe? Man, that's become a bigger and bigger word to me, Thais, is belief and the dangers of it, honestly. I find myself using these days, trying to say a lot more of, with everything I've figured out thus far, this is where I'm deciding to put my faith. Literally, I'll put faith, and I don't mean that from a religious context or even a spiritual, but with everything, what do we have certainty in? Very, very little. So, but with what I've figured out, this is what I have faith in financially. So I'm going to invest this way or spend this way, or relationships, I'm going to do this. But a belief is so often I find us using it in a way that is just going, this is it. This is my truth. Done. I'm not going to think about it again. And you got to think about it every day, I think, to be healthy. And looking at the limiting beliefs, I feel like we got to look at it every single day. I want to think that, I've abolished those, but no, I haven't, because I wake up a month from now or a year from now and go, holy crap, can't believe I take Thais's quiz there and figure out my attachment style and go, son of a gun. Yeah, I'm looking, I think about, here's what I want, here's why, and I know what it is. And then this circumstance happened, or this relational encounter, and all of a sudden, boom, I'm triggered. And I'm now being driven out of fear. And the one that gets me most is self-protection.
Yeah.
And, that one, and I'm the dismissive avoidant, and now I'm looking at it and going, oh, this just happened. My drive just got derailed. And if I don't catch it, if I don't understand my attachment style and understand my filters, I am now, using the drive analogy, I just took a detour. And it may be towards a cliff or a dead end or just a bunch of years of wasted time, which I've done. I mean, that's part of my story. It's part of the book of things that I'm the driven guy, and I'm just driving like my hair's on fire. And a lot of times don't know where on earth I'm going. I don't know, man. I'm just driving. That looked cool. Let's go. Let's go for it. And I used to do that with guys, a bunch of pro cyclists in a car, and we'd be driving cross country, and we got in this habit of finding some cool vista with a mountain and just stopping and going, okay, race you to the top of that mountain. We don't, we're kind of going, we don't know where we're going to end up. And that was my life. And yeah, limiting beliefs, beliefs in general, I am so wary of, Thais, these days.
And I love that you said that, because what I hear in that is how much you'll just continuously keep an open mind, right? Not saying, what I know so far, what I'm putting my faith in for now. I love how much that speaks to not attaching to a specific belief and actually being able to really keep your mind open. I just wanted to pop in here and let you know we are doing a 7-day free trial to the All Access Membership Pass at PDS, which means you get access to literally everything inside of the school. And this includes the 4 live webinars I do with our students every single week. And on top of that, you get access to all of our different courses. We have over 55 different courses on relationships, communication, boundaries, emotional mastery, guilt and shame, learning your needs, so many different facets that are really important to master our lives and feel really good about our lives going forward. And last but not least, there's a daily community event. We have trained facilitators and coaches who are in there doing that work, showing up to support you on your journey every single day. Please join me on the other side. Come check it out. See if it's a fit for you. I'd love to see you there. Go ahead and sign up by clicking the link in the description box below. So I want to move in a different direction. You in your book have different chapters all outlining drive in different areas of life. So you talk a little bit about what drives your relationships versus your body versus your mind. And what are some things that you really found through all of your discussions and research, starting with what tends to drive our mind?
What tends to drive, well, that's it. It's the programming that we, got early on, that it's so narrow. And so much of the book, I almost felt like it was an audit. I am trying to lead people and doing an audit and step back and go, okay, here are the norms, even outside of the programming, that here are just the norms of our culture. I mean, look at me. It's so hard to say this because you got to take this with an open mind, as you said, and look at it and go, man, I just, I was in a religious construct, and you find somebody that you like and you get married, and then you have kids and you get a job and you go along. And now some of my closest friends, actually the godparents to my kids, are a couple. They never had kids. And initially that would have been, that's countercultural. I mean, my gosh, oh my gosh, what are they missing? You go down the road, you're missing out on this, this, this. And then of course, what I learned in walking to their lives is, oh my goodness, the stuff that they have been able to do that I can't, the stuff that they've experienced, they have just as equal opportunity to go, Kevin, man, great to have the kids, but man, there's a whole lot that you are not able to experience, with that. Now I'm exaggerating the point, and it's an exaggeration. I have 9 kids, so I'm at the far end of kiddom and parenting, but to look at that and go, man, why don't we question that more? Do I want to get married? And I take people down, again, this is blasphemous according to my upbringing, but why don't we ask ourselves, do you want to get married? Do you want to have a full-time job? I know people who work half the year and sail the next half of the year, or just work very little, just enough to make ends meet. And others who have made $1 billion don't have to work again. And there's no right, or back to belief, right or wrong, good or bad. I don't know. Can we step back and give ourselves permission? That's the biggest word. I wish I'd even used it more in the book, honestly, Thais. Give ourselves, this is an opportunity to give yourself permission to step back and really ask yourself what you want. And I want, if you're young, it's a prime time to do that. So I can speak to that. But I really want it just as much for the 50. Well, I'm 53, a 53-year-old like me, with a big house and a big mortgage like me, with a business, with employees, with people to pay, with kids, whether it's 1 kid or 9 kids, if you're ridiculous, whatever it is, and go, still, and you're 53. Step back and ask yourself, and you may find that, hey, you're doing some things you don't want to. It may take you a long time to extract out of that, but so what? What if it takes 10 years and now you're 60 and you're where you want to be? So a lot of it was just, stepping back and going, let's get honest. I find that most people have never considered it. They just never really considered their life. And is this really what I want? Or is it's just the culture? We just accept the norm.
I love that. I love that. And I really hear this key message of, we have to actually self-observe. Like, we have to actually dive into what's showing up for us. And
Mhm.
how much of it is what we chose versus what sort of was chosen for
Oh
us
my gosh,
by
yes.
programming and society and all these different things. So in your journey personally, as you're moving through these different areas of your life and sort of introspection and exploration, what habits did you use on a regular basis to sort of assess? Like, would you have a sort of morning habit where you would go through and just introspect about different areas of life? Or how did you move from a place of being potentially more on autopilot into a space where you're more intentional?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, on a morning program, which I'm always sensitive to that. I've got a brother, and man, his main creative time is like 8 p.m. to 1 a.m.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's
8,
probably
8
me
p.
too.
Really?
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah. I'm a
Uh,
night creative person. The morning I'm just like waking up a little more slowly.
okay, so so let's put that forward before we get off on the morning routine. Now, by 8 o'clock, I'm thinking about bed and the book that I'm reading, that I want to read the next chapter and then fall asleep. And he's getting started, and apparently you are too. So whenever it is, for me, it is the morning time. So I get up, that's when my energy, I mean, I wake up and boom, I'm thinking already. And so it is taking that time pretty much every morning. And it may be 20 minutes, it may be 2 hours and 20 minutes. I really just kind of do it organically, but it is always that. But really a bigger answer, Thais, is taking in, it's not just even taking in information. I mean, you can see the books behind me. And I've had 250 plus people on my show, and all those books, including yours, which is showcased over my left shoulder there, as you'll notice. And it is, I want to say, yeah, it is taking in new information. Um, it has really been significant to take in information that I previously wouldn't have allowed. And that I've mentioned it a couple times. I came from again, it's nothing crazy. I lived in the Bible Belt, and it was a Christian upbringing, but it was pretty tight.
Yeah.
And I did not give room to, you even said an open mind, Thais. Even that phrase, I mean, think about my dad, Amish, dude, that's not open, nothing against them,
Yeah.
but they're not open-minded. That's not, they're the antithesis of that. They're closed-minded and boom. And there are some cool things about that. And there are some, in my opinion, some not so cool things with that. And to be open-minded, and there's a big part of life, your core beliefs, you're not open-minded. There's no room for open-minded because we know the truth. We know the facts. That's going to ruffle some feathers. And I still believe in some absolute truths. I still have faith. I have faith in a God, literal deity. But man, to open my mind, be open-minded and open myself up to some other thoughts, it was hard. It was uncomfortable. It almost felt, I had something recently and I had to realize, okay, I kind of feel yucky. That's really the thought that went in my mind. I kind of feel yucky, and I need to get rid of that because it's really my baggage. The information is good, but I don't like where it came from. And I had to work through that,
Yeah.
and so taking in, yeah, being more open-minded and listening to people who have success that you can't ignore has been really significant in questioning my beliefs, which is, last thing I'll say on it, Tice. I mean, when I really started doing that, it was so, it was so, it was like my footing. I had no footing. And
Yeah.
I was looking at it and going, I know this is wisdom for me to open my mind and to accept some other things and to get rid of all my certainties. But oh my gosh, I don't know what to stand on now. And it was a year. It really felt like a year and a half of going, okay, I'm doing this. I'm not going to die. I'm okay. But I am discombobulated, guys. I'm on uncertain ground. And that happened.
And will you speak to that? Because I have to say, it's interesting just knowing a little bit about you and your background that you shared and how you came from a more religious family. And then because you struck me the first time we spoke as one of the more open-minded people I had met. And that was something like if I had to describe you from our interactions, and I would have said, oh, very open-minded. And so it's so interesting to hear how profound that's been, that was almost more of an intentional process. It wasn't something that was necessarily innate. Like, it's interesting to hear that that's something you sort of worked at, because
Mm,
obviously you've come a long way. So I hear you
mm,
say, I take in new information, and I hear in there too, almost like you're really intentional with the information. So let's say you read a book, I would assume, and I'd love to hear what you think about this, that being closed-minded is you read the book and you either reject or you just completely accept. But I think from a critical thinking space, we actually assess, right? We take in an information and we don't just say, oh, because this person is a quote unquote expert, they have all the answers. But how does that line up for me? Does this book resonate with me and my life? And so, what would that process look like if somebody's also working on becoming more open-minded to not just take in new information, but assess that information, see how it resonates with them? How would you advise somebody go about that if they're in a space of really questioning their beliefs?
You have really good questions. That's why we talked for, what was it, 2.5 hours last time, 3 hours. um, Man, the first thing that came to mind, Thais, in regards to me and you testifying that you experienced me as being open-minded, I think the most dangerous thing is when we think that we are. So everybody out there who's listening, if you say, "Oh, I'm open-minded," I'd say red flag. Red flag. Not nothing against you.
I
I've
like
red flagging
that.
myself.
Yep,
It
yep.
was my belief that I was open-minded that kept me from being open-minded. And it was the admission of going, holy crap, I'm not. And I got called out for it. I got called out, honestly, Tice, by my kids, some of my older kids at one point. I'm going, Dad, you say you're open-minded, but boom, boom. And I couldn't deny it. And two, a really influential thing. I mean, I've been podcasting for, I think it's 8 years now. And again, I'm pointing to the books behind me, 250, I don't know. I use that. We've been using that number for a long time. I guess it's more than that now, but a lot of people. And I mean, the most influential people on the planet, period. I mean, some of them literally globally lately. And then people like you have influence over millions of people, and hearing their stories. And I would come on and ask them. I used to do this specific, I called it the habits show. and I would have them run through these key areas of life: relationships, money, health and wellness, spirituality. And I'd ask them about that. And then I turned it into kind of, what drives you in there? And I'd hear things that I thought, oh, I don't really want to publish that. And at first it was uncomfortable. And then over time, I'm going, why am I closed to this? Why am I closed to this? Because this person has achieved things. They're influencing people. They're helping people. I've got them on the show. And why is that distasteful to me? Again, it doesn't mean that I have to accept that belief. So I want to be super open-minded. And at the end of the day, I have to make a decision on what I'm going to put my faith in everything, from what car I'm going to drive to, is to what relationships I'm going to have and how. And man, it was realizing that I think that we think we're open-minded. We have a culture right now that prides themselves, I feel like, on thinking they're open-minded. And yet especially, that you go to social media, I don't hear open-mindedness. I hear just as much judgment as I used to from the pulpit.
Maybe
And
more. Yeah.
maybe more. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I would be, I know you're interviewing me here, but I would ask you the same thing of being able to, yeah, take some knowledge and have, I guess, your own self-confidence enough to read it. My dad used to say this: don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I grew up with that. And yet I did. If it had a belief that I didn't line up with, I just didn't do it. I didn't have them on my show. I
Yeah.
still have some struggles there. I was just, before we got on, I was responding to my team about having some people on the show, and I'm going, this feels a little uncomfortable. I don't know if I want to have that. And it probably means I should do a new podcast, people I'm uncomfortable with, and have them on the show.
And like, I love that you're talking about this, because I think we have this kind of culture that's cropped up, especially the last few years, where you can look at so many different aspects of life. And we don't have to go, I'm no political expert here, but you see people with different political views not being able to have conversations.
Yeah.
And I think that we almost lost this ability to have conversations with people with different opinions without it being an issue. And that to me is like the antithesis to the opposite of being able to be open-minded, where we can make space for people who have a difference of opinions. Because even if we don't agree on everything, and we probably won't, there might be something we learn or take away, or there might be more empathy or compassion or understanding that we build and grow through having conversations like that. And I think it speaks to that point. So I love that you said that. Now, you said earlier you had this habit show, and that you would ask people questions about what drives them, and the different habits that they had in these different areas of life. Are you able to share some of those? Like, maybe we can even go through them together so that people can take some of these ideas and concepts and start applying them to their lives now.
Yeah. It was a primary content source for my book. I mean, I spend every week, with once or twice, I'm going to have these long conversations like you and I did. We had a 3-hour conversation, and I can do that a lot on a topic. And I saw threads. Again, I love threads. Maybe there's not some scientific triple blind, double placebo, whatever, blah, 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 like my doctor buddies do. I don't have that. I'm not a Harvard professor like the 15 I've had on the show. But you just look at, evidence. Look at the evidence. I don't know. I did that with spirituality. I brought it out. I mean, that's the first, I think it's the first chapter in my book. And I'm not espousing a religion. I'm not, and I've had a lot, on the show, a lot of different faiths and religions and whatnot. And what stuck out to me, though, is out of all these people, it's interesting that they all place a big value on spirituality. So I just offer that up. It'd be like, hey, if out of all the 250 people, successful people on my show, or if you said whatever your gig is, you want to be a millionaire or a billionaire, it's interesting. We surveyed 1,000 billionaires, and all of them get up at 3 a.m., climb up on their roof, and yodel. Man, if that's the case, I'm going to do it.
I'm going to be yodeling.
I'm yodeling at 3 a.m. up on the roof. It was kind of like that. That was a lot of the threads of looking and going, man, they all have an aspect of spirituality, even if I don't want to minimize a base level, or how I define spirituality is a devotion to something greater than yourself.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it has to be a God or a deity or the stars. It could be the humanity, the earth, whatever it is, but there's some devotion. I had one professor She was man, I don't know, Yale or something, Princeton, something like that. And I asked her, and she says, I just don't resonate with spirituality. And she asked me a question. I said, well, we're here because you wrote a book to help people that you feel a passion to help. That's kind of what we're talking about. You're not just looking in the mirror, taking care of your own butt. You're serving lots of butts, you know?
Yeah.
And so that, and, you know, health and wellness is one that's just, it's almost irrefutable. I don't know of anyone on my shelves who I ask about health and wellness. They said, no, I could care less. None. None. Even the ones, even though I had, and I remember one of them, Ruth Sukup was one, but there was a guy and another one as well that were three that I had on. They said, I hate exercise. Hate it.
Oh, wow.
Always have. I hate it, but I know I need it. So I hire a personal trainer to come and knock on my door. I think it was Ruth. And she said, man, if I'm asleep in my jammies, I get up, I answer the door, they walk in and they take me through the workout because I know I need it. It's brilliant. You know, it's not some rah fest. It's just the reality. And so that, I mean, I can go through every area, you know, looking at relationships, and there's a lot of, it's not like everybody knocked out of the park. There's a lot of people and they say, man, I really struggle here. I really struggled in relationships because I was so passionate about my work. I had to make such a big effort, and and to hear him be open about that. But ultimately, and that was the point of my book, is getting to your values. What do you value? And these people who we see and influence us, that we follow, that we listen to, that we read about, they have all tapped into something that they really value. And then over here on the side, and you know this from a therapeutic standpoint, we've got chronic illness and disease. And my understanding is one of the fastest growing one is our diseases of despair, is our apathy and depression, and even to suicide. And what I find there is people who are so disconnected with anything that they really value. And it's a horrible, horrible place to be.
100%. Now, if somebody's sitting here going, okay, how do I discover more of what I value? Is it just going back to that introspection piece that we talked about earlier? Or are there signposts, things like where you naturally read and research things, or what really lights you up, even if just for a moment? Like, are there these little signposts along the way, or clues for people if they're starting from ground zero? Or is that something you just recommend? Go in, take the time, do the research on yourself in that capacity.
Oh, I could see it in your face when you said it. You know, when you see it in people and it lights them up, something they'll talk about. I love doing that. It's one of the things that got me really into devoting myself to, the self improvement world, was I found myself sitting across the table a lot of time from guys, because that's who I tend to hang out with as a guy. And, they're working a job and they've got a family and life's okay, but they're just kind of, it's boring, or they're
Yeah.
kind of numb, or they're
They're like
trying not to be depressed.
existing. They're just
Well,
existing, kind
they're
of.
just, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that burdens me. And so I'd start picking, like so what about this? And I saw that you did this and whatever. And you start seeing them come alive. And oh my, that's what gets me going. And I'm like, let's get you doing that full time. And that's where I started an organization that I ran for a long time that helped people pursue self-employment, to pursue that thing that lights them up. I think it's there. But Thais, when you asked that, even from that time, I'm concerned that we have a culture that is getting further removed. And a lot of times they can't figure it out.
Yeah.
They really can't. And I've looked at that and go, I mean, there's some people that I don't know what to tell them other than you've got to go out and try some things. You've got to go exposure. I don't know what else to give you, because we can't just pull it out of nothing. So that is one of it. You may need to go literally expose yourself, get yourself experience in some, which, we can do that. I mean, you can do that on Netflix documentaries these days.
Yeah. It's
Go
true.
listen to, I mean, in here, we're doing a podcast to go listen to people who have done different things and see what piques your interest. I'll add real quick. The one other thing is, a lot of times people around, and that was even good for me. When I first started building this brand, came up with the book concept. It wasn't about drive. It was like, what do you want? I think that's what I was calling it. What do you want? And then we decided, it's going to be about motive. Motive. That's the word, motive. And it was my brother. He was like, dude, it's drive. You're like the most driven person I've ever known. Oh yeah. Yeah, I guess so. But what's common to you, and here's the big point there, is that all that continues to blow me away is what is remarkable. I just had a Guy Kawasaki on the show. His new book is called Remarkable People. And we talked about it there, that what is remarkable about you is often just commonplace to you because it's just you. So I was, my brother had to pull it out. Dude, you were a pro cyclist. You've had 100 kids. You built this monster alternative house. You've done all these cool things. I thought, gosh, I don't know. It's just what we did. It doesn't seem remarkable to me. Yeah. And you're like Mr. Driven. Oh, all right. So testimonies from others can help a
I
lot.
love that. I think that's an amazing one to give to people. And I love what you said too, which is something that I feel like sometimes society nowadays doesn't do because we have screen time, we've got our social media, and we've got a comfortable environment and home, and life doesn't require us to go out and get as much life experience. But if you don't know what people tell you is amazing, but also go out and try things. I just love that. So
Yeah.
I'd love to go through, since you've had so many incredible guests on your incredible podcast. And I would love to talk about some of the most powerful lessons you learned in the different areas of life. And I'm curious if, you may not have all of them top of mind, but things that stood out to you. So if we start just first with like career area, what are some of those things that you've seen with your guests who have shifted your perspective or who've made you look at these things in a totally different way?
Career wise, man, the most recent is probably Arthur Brooks.
And what were
You know,
those big lessons that you noticed?
his book, Strength to Strength, his agency sent it to me. I mean, I knew his name and big name. I was kind of like, yeah, of course I'll have him on the show. But they sent me his book, and I'm sitting on my couch at home where I'm at most mornings and I'm reading it. Oh my gosh. He just undressed me because he's talking about, strength to strength. He's at the first part of life. You are innovating and creating and formulating and, grinding it out and killing it, whatever. And he's talking about you're using your fluid knowledge. He says that literally, their research, that literally your brain shifts and it has less ability to do that. So if you're 40, 50, whatever, midlife, and you're starting to feel tired of this stuff, yeah, you are. You're not. And this is what gets people to burn out and to fear of, oh my gosh, can I keep churning it out like this? And so I'm reading that and I'm like, I'm morbidly depressed. This is terrible. Because I'm looking at that and go, yeah, I feel that way. I don't feel like I want to slow down, but I'm so tired of certain things. And he said, okay, here's the shift. You ready? If you can now understand you have crystallized knowledge, and if you'll embrace that and use your wisdom. So you're not building and creating so much. You're over here. You've done a lot. Now you can teach from that. It's like the Holy Grail. It was a great fit. And I realized I'm kind of doing that, but it really gave me confirmation. And then of course I did a show and I had him back on the show again. He did his next book with Oprah, but I still ended up talking about strength to strength half the time. And I shared it with so many friends because they're, most of my friends are in my age, anywhere from, 40 to 60 or most of the guys I hang out with. And it so resonated with them as far as work. And I found myself hearing somebody talk and I'll go, all right, dude, you got to go listen to the show or read the book because I hear you talking about you're wearing out and burnout is such a big word now. And I think it's one of the best depictions of that. So from a vocational, that's one of the most recent. That's one that
I love
stood
that
out
one.
big
That's a
time.
great one. And you've had so many amazing guests on. I'm interested to see the biggest part that stood out to you. And what about in terms of health and wellness? Is there anything that really stood out to you in that area?
Man, that has been health. I mean, I was a pro athlete, and then from that, really got involved. Had some great friends. I call them mentors, but friends at the time who were really pursuing health and wellness from, vegetarian and vegan, and not that that's it, but just questioning things, looking at the environment and resources and consuming and whatever. But I always just wanted to. I I think I get credit for being strong, and I sometimes wonder maybe I'm like weaker because I have so little tolerance for feeling bad, for feeling low energy. And most of my work is creative. And we know that if you're feeling low, if you're, lacking sleep, your creative abilities go, your critical thinking goes. And and so I feel handicapped if I don't feel well. So that's always been a pursuit of mine. So I've had a lot of people on the show. And I think the biggest ones, gosh, that's a hard question. I mean, because I could go off about food and gut health. We just did one. Actually, I don't even know if it's come out yet. With Tom O'Brien, he has this new series, The Inflammation Equation. It's a docu series that came out, And it's really looking at inflammation in us. And so all these things, if I was to say what has been the most impacting to me, it may be the one that's the hardest for me. It's meditation. It's stopping and just call it meditation, call it just sitting still and being present. No, it's not fair, Thais. Honestly, here, this is because to sit still and here, I'll give you this, and you'll understand this better than most. To sit still with my thoughts, I can actually do that all day. I can do that for a week. Sit still with my thoughts, and I've always said that if I got put into prison, it'd be awesome, actually, as long as I had a pad of paper and a pen or a computer, something I could write with. Okay, but meditation, this is one that was I just got hit with it, challenged again by a friend. Don't sit there with your thoughts. Sit there without your thoughts, Kevin, which feels impossible. But so now I'm practicing this. Just let them run through. I can't stop them, but say hi and then let them run through. Don't sit there and to do that. That is what I'm missing. That's where I want more peace. Honest, I want more peace. I want less anxiety. I want my cortisol levels to go down because I can just always be interested and excited about something, which sounds great, but I'm never just, can I just rest? Learning to play was hard. That was a hard lesson, that realizing I had forgotten how to play, that it was always producing. So health and wellness, that's been the one, is to try to clear my mind and give I think about it like fasting. Fast, don't eat food, give your body a chance to
Break.
just rest, quit digesting. Can I do that with my head? I'd rather fast.
I love that. And there's this wonderful quote. It's like an Eckhart Tolle quote. And he says, the more attached we are to our mind, the more we suffer. But he's saying the more we observe. And it's funny because I share with you very similarly. I get very passionate about things very easily and very excited. And then I have a habit of piling too many things on my plate because I'm excited about all of them. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh no, I took too many things on. And then your mind speeds up and then you're like, wait, I have to take things off my plate. So I very much relate to
I think that's the hard play. It's great to have something you're excited about, but can you turn it off? And a lot of the folks that I have on the show struggle with that.
I bet. So I want to cover two more topics here just briefly. You mentioned burnout. Burnout. How do you think burnout and drive are interrelated? And maybe we could even substitute in there life purpose or finding things we're passionate about. When there's an absence of that, or if there's a lot of overlap, what do you see some of the output as being?
That one's acute to me because I have done burnout. I've had a couple significant, more than a couple. I have burned out multiple times, and it was going after something, fervently going after something that I believed in. My heart was in the right place, and yet I didn't know what was driving me. And man, I see it in so many people. I'll give you a great example on burnout, and that's it. It's seeing people who are driving towards things and they don't really know why.
Wow, I love that. So can you share a couple personal ones for people so they can see if
Yeah, I could share you a total
Yeah.
personal one, and it was me. I'll even give you the business. So back in 2010, somewhere around there, I think it was, I started this organization. It was on online membership called Free Agent Academy. And people paid $95 a month to come in there and go through some kind of a curriculum, but go through these areas of figuring out what it is that lights you up. Like we talked about earlier, this is what I was doing over tables. And I thought, I want to do this full on. But I put it in self-employment, because for me to go after fully, freely what you want, for me, it's self-employment.
Mm.
I held that up as a holy grail that I now backed off of. Man, if you can do that in a job, more power to you. The point is going after what lights you up. But I did it within self-employment, and had great success. I had really good success. We had a lot of people in there that was making money. We were doing events. I did events out here in Colorado. I'd rent out a camp, so we'd have a place to meet, and everybody could house there. And we had people come in and do this, and it was great. But the responsibility that I took for everyone, and it was this as a therapist, the Superman complex, God complex, call it what you want to. And I ran myself ragged. I even got other people involved. I had 9 professors, people that came in and invested of themselves. I had help, and yet I still felt responsible. So I micromanaged and I did it. And at the end of it, you say, well, what do you want to do? Well, I'm helping people pursue their dreams and their purpose and passion. You know, why are you doing it the way you're doing it? Why are you running yourself ragged? Because I have to prove that I care. I have
Wow.
to I have to prove that
That's
I'm not
great.
in this for the money. I'm not
Mhm.
in this for the power or the notoriety or the fame. I have to prove that I'm all heart because of a past wound. Wasn't my dad. I always point this out, but I had a significant experience as a young 20-year-old getting involved with some high-level businessmen who had some significant moral failings. And one of them was a mentor to me, almost a father figure, and had a moral failing. And it rocked me. And I literally wrote in my journal, can you be a successful businessman and live out your values and be morals? So here I am with that thought in mind. And yet I am that guy too. So I'm in that space and I don't want to be that guy. So we got cognitive dissonance happening here, and I didn't reconcile it and I didn't know. And I ultimately, as the business was ramping up, I was dying. And I ultimately, oh, I did some bad stuff. I mean, bad stuff, not bad, like moral bad, but I started to say, this is what people need. I mean, if they were paying and they weren't showing up, I kicked them out. And if they weren't going through the process like I wanted them to, I, I literally contained them and said, no, you have to. I mean, it was the opposite of, business wise, give people what they want so you
Yeah.
can give them what they need. There's marketing wisdom, folks. Write that down, get a tattoo, give them what they want to give them what they need. I flipped it. I don't care what they want. We're getting what they need. And I ultimately shut it down. I shut it down and walked away. And I regret it. If I had it today, it'd probably be making 20 million bucks a month. All the people that were in it testify to how much a benefit it was to their lives. I hear from people all the time, and I killed it. It was me. It was me feeding a drive I didn't know was there.
Can we do one other example so that people can that was such a powerful share. So we think that we're being driven by specific things sometimes. And would you almost go so far as to say a sign would be if somebody is driving too hard, they're starting to burn out. Maybe there's something that's a motivation that's not about just showing up to do what your mission is for your business or your project. There's something deeper there that's really driving you in a different direction. That's such a powerful story. Do you have any other example that you've seen of that where somebody burnt out because what they thought they were doing was actually more driven by a fear or something from a previous experience?
Gosh, there's a lot of people that have, gosh, been on the show. Gosh, a recent one, Jordan Grummett. So he is a doctor, and his dad was a doctor, and I may have the details wrong, but he's, 8 years old, 10 years old, something like that. And his dad dies. And something about that, he viewed it through the eyes of a little kid and decided it was his fault. And he was going to devote his life to keeping other people from dying. And so he went and became a doctor, and he went to I think it was some Ivy League, like Harvard. I mean, he went full tilt, boogie on it. Gets out. He's now a licensed doctor or whatever they are, and goes into practice and realized really quick, I hate this. I
Wow.
hate this. I mean, that's a huge one. I mean, you talk about the time and the money and the whatever to drop that. Now he ultimately then got involved and became a palliative care doctor, which from an income standpoint, whatever, is far less than where he was. And he wrote a book called Taking Stock about his experience with people dying. And well, that's another story. He'd be a good one for the show. But that story happens a lot where people go into a vocation for the expectations of others. That's an easy one. We all know that. Oh yeah, my parents said I got to be a doctor or I got to be a lawyer, whatever. We hear those stories. But here is one nobody told him. And it just came out of his own. Nobody even knew. He didn't even know. He didn't know till long time. He had to unpack that. So now he's 30, 35 and big wig doctor, and he's starting and realizing, I don't like this. What on earth happened?
Oh.
And I think it was a while. I can't remember the exact time. It was a while before he unpacked that and figured out why. So again, here I am with my kids going, guys, what do
Make
you know?
sure.
Make sure I've got to, it was from Jordan Grummett because he talked about Maslow's
Hierarchy of
hierarchy.
needs.
I have a son who's 18, and it was right around when I talked with Jordan, and I took it to him and said, dude, we're flipping this. You know how to make money. I've taught you that. My kids grow up going to farmers market and selling stuff and learning, how to
Oh,
make a
cool.
dime and how to win friends and influence people. They know that stuff. They'll do fine out there. Let's just flip it. Right now, you're 18. I honestly, I don't want you to go to college. I don't want you looking for a full-time job. I want you to figure out yourself. You figure yourself out, you're a therapist, figure yourself out. The rest of it that may be simplistic, but for him, knowing the other things that I've equipped him in, he's going to know he knows how to work. He knows how to deal with people. He knows how to, rent an apartment. I mean, he can do that stuff. Let's figure out you, because the rest of us are over here doing life for 50 years and then realizing, oh crap. And to come around then, that it's so much that Maslow's, what is it? What's the self-actualization?
Oh yeah. There's hierarchy, the hierarchy of needs, and then the top of the pyramid is self-actualization.
Self-actualization. Yeah. So to try to do that after you've been running the same program for 50 years.
Yeah.
So I don't even have a burden. My burden, it's not for the youth, but I think, man, they're the best ones to go out to figure this stuff out now, so they don't later. I end up working with people, later in life, and it's so much hard. That it's so much harder.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we close, I will ask where people can find more about you and your book and your show and all the amazing things that you're doing. But you asked this question, but I'm curious to hear your answer. What drives you? What are the things that are really lighting you up currently in your life?
What drives me is I just wrote something on this. It was kind of a counter or contrarian view at narcissism. So, man, the most narcissistic thing is to help people, to be kind, to lift their lives, because it's just the thing that makes us feel the best. It sounds altruistic, but we know it's true. And so, what drives me is it's really my own experience, though. I get the most excitement and the most hope, but goodness, it's a good question for you, Thais. I don't think I've ever asked anybody this. I think it's also a fear that if I'm not growing, I'm stuck. There's some, I don't think I've said that, but I've known it, but I haven't said it. You tell me. I think there's a fear there.
Yeah, and a lot of our programming is fear-based, and it can produce good things, right? I'm afraid of somebody feeling alone, so I'm empathetic. I'm afraid, things like that. But a lot of those things can serve us in really good ways until they reach a critical threshold. If it's not balanced, then it can be problematic. So we have a basic human need for growth, which would probably drive you. And the absence of that will feel stuck. Or we can have like this terror of feeling stuck that overdrives the need for growth, that then causes us to be too one-sided about it, like growth above everything. Who cares what people think? I'm just going to grow. Don't worry about other people's feelings. I'm just going to grow.
Yeah.
You can sort of tend to see when something's driven by fear, it's imbalanced. But if something's driven by just a pure need, it tends to be more balanced across time.
That makes sense. I think I'm trying to balance it a little bit with, saying, oh, I love personal growth and I want to help everybody grow. And it's like this altruistic, all positive thing. I think it is. And I think it's has some fear base too. Just like man, my gosh, I know so many people in the health and wellness and fitness space who want to help people because they found help.
Yeah.
And there's goodness in that. They want to help that, but they also struggle with their own, they can go too far, their own addictions around fitness and how they look and whatever. And you hear that. And I think the reality is it's probably a balance of those, a tension. I like the tension. So I probably have a tension between I'm excited and hopeful about personal growth and to realize, man, I can experience more and I can be more. And that sounds great. And I think I also have hopefully a healthy fear over here of if I don't, I'm just stuck. I'm just here. And I don't feel it's like that. We play with the words of contentment or satisfaction. And, you can semantic somewhat, but I look and go, should I be content with today and who I am and where I'm at? And so in the way that I define that, I want that. I've spent a lot of time not being content. And now I want to step back and, have peace. I don't need to drive like it's on my hair's on fire. I want to drive out of health, not out of unhealth. Right. So be content, but am I satisfied? Like, do I just, at some point, am I going to get, or do I want to get to where I'm just good? I really have how boring to me.
I hear that. I do agree with that. I'm not gonna, yeah.
I got to see, I got to be with, my show started out off as the Ziglar show with Zig Ziglar, or from him. And I got to see him later in life. And now I just got to be with my dad. And so Zig was like 86 when he died. My dad, from a short-term cancer thing, died at 76, but both of them had they weren't just dissing everybody with retirement, but they themselves said, I have no intent to, I hope I'm writing a book and helping people and doing this till the day I die, because it's what fulfills me. I mean, it was, in that way, I want to say it was totally selfish. Anthony DeMello would say it was an evolved selfishness.
Yes, I hear that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is the improvement, and learning. And I think I'm most excited. I was with you, Thais, to read your book and then take the test and go, oh my gosh, I've been unaware. I now have a new hope and a new freedom for myself that I didn't know, because of what I found out. Now I get to walk that out and hopefully be growing every day from my dismissive avoidant to or attachment, dismissive avoid attachment to secure.
Yeah.
That's freaking exciting.
And as a lifelong passionate person about growth, I completely relate. I think that's beautiful to hear.
Yeah.
So where can anybody listening find out more about you, your book, your podcast, all the amazing work that you're doing in the world?
Well, as generic as my name is, it still pulls up everything. So kevinmiller.co, kevinmiller.co. That's all the social media, whatever. My show is the number one thing. You can type that into one of the podcast players, just Kevin Miller. But what drives you? I mean, that's where I am. And we do long form shows with people like you, because I got lots of questions. So I can take a couple hours or longer and talk those. But now we're also producing most days of the week in between the longer form shows, just short ones. I try to keep it under 10 minutes. And a lot of times it's just messages from my guest, and there'll be certain points, and I want to expound on that. Gosh, so Thais said this, and this is what's exciting about this, and this is your opportunity. Here's what I found 3 steps to that I think will really step. And so we put those out almost every weekday, I guess. So the show, What Drives You, and everywhere else is kevinmiller.co.
And that's where they can find your book as well.
Yes, the book. Oh, yeah, the book. Yeah, I have a book too. What Drives You? Yeah, also, What Drives You? Well, you can find that on Amazon or wherever you get your books.
Perfect. Thank you so much for this conversation. I think everybody will really enjoy this. And thank you for being here. It's always amazing to chat with you.
Thanks for the insightful questions. Just like we did last time, we could talk. We need to do more podcasts together.
I agree. We'll both be back.
But you gave me an idea. We'll talk about it when we're off mic here.
If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Share it with friends and family who are on their journey of personal development and growth, and thank you for listening. Next week, we'll be back with more insights to guide you on your journey. And until then, keep practicing our tools and strategies to change your subconscious mind and apply some of the powerful learnings from this podcast so that you experience real life transformation.